What's going on, you guys? Welcome to another episode of the Greatness Away Show. I am your humble host, Chris Kazama, and I hope you are feeling nothing less than great. Thanks for tuning in to another episode if you're a returning subscriber. And if you're a new subscriber, welcome to the most urban YouTube channel, holding it down for none other than the PlayStation in the right way, of course. So today we're going to be stepping away from the world of games a little bit and stepping into the world of accessories, more specifically the PlayStation VR, an amazingly immersive piece of virtual reality tech that I think is great and it has massive potential. Now, the PlayStation VR has been out for all of 5 months and I've had mine since launch, and I've had so much fun with this thing. I've even went as far as getting a platinum trophy in one of the PlayStation VR games. That's how much fun this thing has been for me. It's been a great experience. But with that being said, I wanted to create a top 5 list of things that would help the PlayStation VR be a lot more successful, in my opinion. Alright, so let's start at the back of the list with number 5, PlayStation VR bundles. Now, with PlayStation VR bundles, Sony actually came out and announced that they were releasing some bundles back on the market for consumers to go pick up. One of them was available at launch, was with the PlayStation VR Worlds bundle, and another one is actually a new bundle, the Until Dawn Rush of Blood bundle. Both really great games, and I'm glad that both of them are back on the market for consumers to go pick up. I think Sony needs to stick to PlayStation VR bundles because, as crazy as the idea sounds, advertising the correct game for the PlayStation VR could mean big sales for that game, and more specifically, big sales for the PlayStation VR peripheral in itself. I think a bundle specifically that we really should have seen is a Resident Evil 7 bundle, and for a few reasons. Number one, when you think about Resident Evil 7, it's a standalone AAA game, but a lot of the advertisement was going into the PlayStation VR being the experience that you wanted to have while playing Resident Evil 7. Now, if you look at the case, obviously it says PlayStation VR mode included, enhance your gameplay with the PlayStation VR. So it is a standalone AAA game. It's not even a first party title, but the PlayStation VR was definitely heavy in promotion when talking about Resident Evil 7. All right, now let's go ahead and move on with this list. Number 4, maneuverability. Now, maneuverability isn't really that big of an issue, but it is a thing that people talk about when it comes to the PlayStation VR. More specifically, the wires, a lot of wires hanging around, a lot of stuff that you have to connect to the PlayStation 4 to get the PlayStation VR up and running. So that is a thing that, you know, Sony needs to think about when it comes to enhancing the experience of the PlayStation VR, because the wires do kind of restrict movement a little bit. There has been a patent that came out not too long ago with a blueprint that was showing a actual model of a wireless PlayStation VR that would connect to the PS4 with Wi-Fi or by Bluetooth. But there has been no announcement, obviously, but it is something to keep in mind because we may see it in the future. So take it with a grain of salt right now. You know, it's just a patent, but let's just say that it's a really good idea, and Sony definitely should jump on that as soon as possible. All right, now moving on to number 3, let's get a little bit deeper in this list. Let's talk about first-party titles and first-party support. Now, this is an argument that I've had with the PlayStation Vita, and if you look at the PlayStation Vita's life cycle, at the beginning, we've seen a huge push of first-party titles, games like Uncharted Golden Abyss, games like Killzone Mercenary, games like Gravity Rush, which is now on the PS4, Gravity Rush Remastered, Gravity Rush 2, games like Tearaway, which is now on PS4 with Tearaway Unfolded, a Little Big Planet game. So we've seen a huge first-party push of games at the beginning of the life cycle. And if you look at the PlayStation Vita now, even where it stands, they're like, the first-party titles are non-existent on the PlayStation Vita. Now, I want to talk about a specific first-party title that's on the PlayStation VR that I love so much. I love this game so much that I even went and got a platinum in it, and that is Riggs Mechanized Combat. If you look at the case, you can see there's a little signature by Herman Host, and we talked about him last video if you watched last video, so you already know who that is. Obviously, I'm repping for the shirt. You know, I had to put on the shirt for the video, but just speaking specifically on Riggs Mechanized Combat, it was such a great experience. I loved it so much. I platinumed the game. I was even in a league, a multiplayer league with a team at one point, playing competitively. But Riggs was such a great game. It was heavily slept on, and it just sucks how, you know, everything just went down with Riggs because Gorilla Cambridge, the team behind Riggs Mechanized Combat, is no longer together. And I know some of the guys over there. They're great people. I love them to death, and I hope they all move on to bigger and better projects. But Riggs specifically, as a first-party title for the PlayStation VR, heavily slept on, but man, I had so much fun with this game. And that's just the whole point. I really think Sony needs to get their in-house first-party studios involved with the PlayStation VR a lot more. You know, we've seen games like Drive Club hit the PlayStation VR. We've seen games like PSVR Worlds. We've seen games like Until Dawn, Rush of Blood. And I'm pretty sure we'll see more. But if we can get a game on the PlayStation VR that comes close to somewhat hitting that Horizon Uncharted hype, not to say so much of the gameplay itself, but just something so great on the PlayStation VR that people look at it and say, I have to pick up a PlayStation VR just for this game, it would help the PlayStation VR out so much, and we would see a huge boost in sales coming from the first party in-house studios working on a great game for the PlayStation VR. Now, one PlayStation VR first party title that's coming up soon that we're going to be talking about in an individual video is Farpoint. The game's coming out in May. It's by Impulse Gear. Guys, I've tried this game out at E3 2016. I've even talked to one of the head of the studio at Impulse Gear about this game. Great game, very immersive. Oh my god, I can't wait for this game. But we're going to talk about that in an individual video coming up soon, so just look out for that. Moving on to the top of the list a little bit, number 2, let's talk about advertisement with the PlayStation VR. And not so much we're talking about, you know, commercial ads or online YouTube ads. We're talking about in-store advertisements, getting kiosks to every one of these retailers so the consumer can get out and try this thing. When talking about retailers, we're speaking on, you know, the Targets of the world, the Walmarts of the world, the Best Buys of the world, the GameStops of the world. You know, these are the retailers where gamers go to pick up their games. These are where, you know, gamers go to try out these new games. They have demo stations, kiosks set up. So the PlayStation VR kiosk and any one of these retailers will definitely help out in advertising. Now, talking specifically about the pricing of the PlayStation VR at standard base price, no game, no bundle, is $400. That's the same price as the PlayStation 4 Pro, and it's $100 more than the PlayStation 4 Mini, which is $300. That's a lot of money for a peripheral that you can't go home and plug up and play. So it only makes sense to put this thing in stores for parents, kids, or anybody to go in and try this thing out to find out what's the hype behind it. You know, there's a few different reasons people want to try this thing out. You know, PlayStation VR right now, and VR in general, virtual reality is a wave. You know, there's the PlayStation VR, there's the HTC Vive, you know, there's the Oculus Rift. There's a lot of VR headsets out on the market right now, and PlayStation VR actually has the advantage by being on the larger market. But consumers still want to try this thing because, you know, they may not be interested in PlayStation VR after, you know, trying this thing out, or virtual reality in general. You know, you have to take into account motion sickness, things of that nature. So ultimately, getting the PlayStation VR out in a kiosk among all these retailers would really help people figure out if they want to spend their hard-earned $400 on the peripheral. Like I said, you can't go home and plug it up and play it by itself. You actually need a system with it. So putting the kiosk out in stores will really help consumers figure out, you know, if virtual reality is really the experience for them, if they really want to dive into virtual reality, if they can handle it health-wise, and it will also entice people to really go out and pick up the PlayStation VR, which is also good for sales. And last but definitely not least, number 1 on this list, it may not seem like the biggest thing on this list, but it is the most important thing on this list: consistency. Now let's go back and talk about the PlayStation Vita for just a second. When going back and looking at the overall outcome of the PlayStation Vita, we can say that consistency had a big part in how the PlayStation Vita really turned out. As we said before, at the beginning of the life cycle, we've seen a lot of first-party games dropping for the PlayStation Vita, and towards the end, all we've seen is a lot of indie games and a lot less of first-party titles for the PlayStation Vita. This ultimately aided in the demise of the PlayStation Vita, and if Sony isn't careful, the same thing could happen with the PlayStation VR. I think when it comes to games, you need a steady flow of AAA games and indie games for the PlayStation VR, not more of one or less of one or the other. You need a lot of AAA games and a lot of indie games. People ask the question all the time of, why is there a lot of indie games on the PlayStation VR? This peripheral is $400. I didn't pay $400 for this. But you have to think, there are so many different experiences for the PlayStation VR. This is virtual reality. This is a whole new wave, a whole new experience that consumers can pick up and try out. So yes, there are AAA games like Resident Evil 7 where you can, you know, feel the horror of an actual horror game, you know, face to face, more like never before. But there are other experiences at home, on the couch, with family, party games that you can pick up and play that are essentially $10, $15, $20 that are really a good, fun way to experience virtual reality. Ultimately, consistency is key. And the thing that Sony needs to remember is to stay patient with the PlayStation VR, but make sure that games are being created for the PlayStation VR. AAA games, indie games, games from the ground up just for the PlayStation VR. The games need to stand out for the consumer to entice them to go pick up the PlayStation VR. But ultimately, when they do, make sure consistency is key. So a lot of games are coming, and it makes PlayStation VR owners really happy. So that's my list of 5 things that I think that would make the PlayStation VR a lot more successful. If you guys have any suggestions, drop them down in the comments below. Let's discuss what will really make the PlayStation VR a lot better. If you guys enjoyed the content and are looking forward to more in the future, please hit that subscribe button at the bottom. If you're really looking forward to more content and you want to see my face on a more consistent basis, because you know consistency is key, hit that little bell, notification bell right there by the subscribe button, and you guys will get the notifications. And until next time, I am your humble host, Chris Kazama. Thanks for checking out the Greatness Away Show. Stay great, and I'm out. Peace.